Good morning again. Good morning. Today's sermon is an update to a sermon that I offered at Summer Institute, Central Eastern Region Summer Institute of the Unitarian Universalist Association. And I am going to get to superheroes, I promise. But first we're going to talk a little about belonging. Because you heard that's my word of the year, you know. You know what? Also, a friend of mine said, hey, where did belonging come from? This is like newfangled word. So I looked it up. The earliest known use of the word belonging in the way that we're kind of using it today, not like something you own, but belonging this way, is from the early 1600s per the Oxford English Dictionary. So it's not a newfangled word. So Charlie's going to help me because I'm going to ask you all what belonging means to you. What does belonging mean to you? Raise your hand. I have friends out there who are going to help me out.
Am I missing hands? Oh, there we go.
Cheryl's going to help me out.
It's being part of a group that has a common mission.
Group that's got a common mission. Yay. Other ideas?
Being part of a family who rescues your car.
Are we hearing okay on the mic? Hello, hello. Oh. Well, who else has got a hand? Yeah, Phil. Pretend this works. Just talk really loud.
All right, not a problem. As a fellow professional musician, belonging to me is a form of compatibility with the people with whom I work. Thank you. And belonging really is a matter of finding who you have the most in common with and being able to bounce ideas off each other. Thank you.
Thank you.
Suzanne.
One more.
Belonging to me is being with family, friends, people that we've chosen, where we have a safe space, where we can be who we are and we're simply accepted by them. And then you feel like you belong.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Charlie, for helping us think about what belonging means to us in the room. So it turns out that a lot of people think about what belonging means in many different professional disciplines. Myriad scholars research about it, and emerging research shows new depths of thinking have emerged kind of really loudly in the era of us really focusing on anti-racism and then enhanced by the COVID era. So I'm going to read you some things from 2022 that Dr. Kellyanne Allen, an Australian scholar, and some colleagues. I actually talked about Dr. Allen in my April sermon. She worked belonging, a review of conceptual issues, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm going to read to you a short excerpt from her more recent work, A Need to Belong, a deep dive to the origins, implications, and future of a foundational construct. No, just a deep dive. She made a deep dive. Here's a quote that I think is relevant and kind of goes a little bit beyond what we just talked about for our work of belonging and kind of leads into the role of lawyers and superheroes in thinking about belonging. Belonging, conceptualized broadly as a fundamental human need, is a complex construct due to its multifaceted components, predictors, and outcomes. A brief synthesis of the bulk of the work that has been done on belonging might read, belonging is good. The absence of belonging, that is bad. I'm actually quoting from a scientific journal. Indeed, most of the research literature before 1995 really did not go much further than this. A step change took place when two leading social psychologists suggested that belonging is not only good, but the desire to belong is a deeply rooted human motivation that underpins from our ancestral origins and permeates our thoughts and feelings and behavior. Belonging, however, unequivocally painted in positive terms by contrasting it to the awkward, imperfect contronym, not a word I use all the time, not belonging, or to notions of social isolation, ostracism, or rejection. And then they go on to say, potential ill effects of belonging can be highlighted if we consider the situations in which some groups of people forge a sense of belonging by othering members of other groups. And so they go on to explore how belonging can be good, but belonging can also be challenging. And it can be particularly challenging, complexities, now this is not their quotes, now this is me. Belongings can be particularly challenging and come to the fore with practicing lawyers and judges who have to figure out within the justice system what belonging might mean there, and wrestling with the intersection of belonging and power. So that's our setup. I'm not going to read to you anything else with footnotes. Well, except there's going to be, that's actually a little not true because I've got a little bit of research, but I'm not going to read the footnote part. Anyways, so here's the main thing that you all came for. She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. Who has seen the She-Hulk series on TV? There are no hands up for those of you who can't see. Oh, wait, one hand up in the back. Yay, I'm not the only one. Anybody read the Marvel comic books from She-Hulk starting in the 70s? Yep, okay. Couple? All right, so this is brand new to a bunch of you. Oh my goodness. I bet you're gonna go figure out how to watch this after, because you're gonna figure out how cool this lawyer Hulk person is. So, this is the opening line. This is She-Hulk, and I'll tell you where it came from. This is the pictures of it going from back in the 70s all the way to now. This is the opening line of the Marvel series, and one of the reasons that my son decided I needed to watch it, Simon, who some of you know. What is the responsibility of those with power? Do they merely have an obligation to refrain from the misuse of that power, or do they have a duty to protect those without it? Yeah. Jennifer Walters is a character who's just in these comic books being She-Hulk. Started in the 70s with the savage She-Hulk. She's a woman who's a highly skilled lawyer who becomes a superhero totally by accident and then has to figure out how to belong and how to achieve justice in this new realm. She's actually described as one of Marvel's most notable and powerful female superheroes. And since her original introduction in comics, the character's been featured in all sorts of Marvel licensed comics, including the t-shirt that I'm wearing, and lots of other spaces, including being made into this wonderful series that you can find on Disney+. Or if you really don't have Disney+ and want to invite yourself over to my house, we can watch it together. I always like rewatches. It's really fun, with the actress Tatiana Maslany. So Jen Walters says this line. She was actually practicing for a closing argument. And then she does this weird thing that actually started in the comics. She closes the door to her office, and she turns to us, the watchers, and breaks the fourth wall. She did this in the comics too. She talked to the readers, and then she talks to the watchers and said, hey, it's true I'm a Hulk, and I'm guessing you're not going to be able to focus on this fun lawyer show until you know all about it. And so she goes, and she starts talking about this. The origin flashback, Jen, the lawyer, is on a road trip with her cousin Bruce Banner, the original Hulk. A lively car conversation is rudely interrupted by evil beings, of course. And so Jen swerves to avoid this big thing that was coming at her, and the car tumbles into a ravine, and emerging from the wreckage, she pulls her cousin Bruce out. She's got some scrapes, Bruce has got some damage, and some of his gamma-irradiated blood falls into an open wound, and all of a sudden, he's turning into a Hulk, and we see reflected in the window, she's turning into a Hulk, and she runs off, and then there's a whole bunch of storyline that's cute but not relevant to what we're talking about, and she's doing this. And so then we flash forward for purposes of us to the next day, where Jen's cousin, Bruce, the Hulk, he's like, well, you've turned into a Hulk, so I have to teach you how to be a Hulk. And he's thinking back to when he became a Hulk. And so he creates this big, indestructible, huge, person-sized container and suggests that she draw upon anger so that she can turn into a Hulk, and then he could teach her how to deal with being a Hulk and coming back from being a Hulk. And he then tries to make her angry. And she's just standing there not getting angry and she's getting a little pissed. But, sorry if I said that on, sorry, she's getting a little miffed. But she's not turning into a Hulk. And then he's getting more and more, she's not turning into a Hulk. She looks at him and she's like, hey, being scared and angry and not giving into it is just being a woman. Turns out that She-Hulk is something that regular Hulk does not possess, the ability to choose when she transforms into a Hulk. Because she's had a lifetime of code, especially becoming a lawyer, a lifetime of code switching and controlling your emotions, simply because she lives in lawyers as a female. Also true of other marginalized communities. We're going to come back to She-Hulk because she is super cool. But we're going to talk about a few other real-life superhero lawyers. 3 amazing women lawyers who've demonstrated actual examples of heroism and struggles to belong in our justice system. Ada Harriet Miser Kepley, Judge LaDoris Hazard Cordell, and the Honorable Shannon E. Filbert. And you're going to be so excited that you know about them. I hope. Otherwise, just lie to me at coffee hour. Oh, that was my initial reflections. I'm sorry. I did initial reflections on a picture of She-Hulk. There she is in her lawyer suit, because I'm wearing, look at me wearing a matching jacket. Here we are. All right, let's go to Ida. You can't read this text. I'm sorry. If you want a copy of the text, email me or grab me. I will get it to you. I'm going to tell you the story of this amazing woman. She was born in 1847. She was a women's suffragist, temperance advocate, and a Unitarian minister. And she was the first American woman to graduate from law school. She wrote in her own autobiography, "I like to be at the front of great movements as far as possible." She was born in Ohio, and then she moved to Illinois, where her parents ran a hotel and bookstore, and then she married Henry B. Kepley, a lawyer who encouraged her to pursue this legal career. So she went to what was then called Union College of Law. It's now the hoity-toity Northwestern. And in 1870 became the first woman to graduate from law school. But she couldn't get admitted to practice law because she was a woman, her gender. So our Unitarian ancestor, Kepley, and her husband successfully lobbied for a bill to forbid sex discrimination in the legal profession, and it became law in 1872. But she was a little bored waiting around for it because she'd gone on to all the other things that she was advocating for. So she finally got around to getting her license in 1881, so she was admitted to practice. But she focused mainly on reform issues like women's suffrage, equal rights, and temperance, which was a big thing back then. She had a whole bunch of things that she did. She even faced physical attacks due to her activism. She embraced her attorney role when she ran for state attorney general, using her campaign to promote women's rights. But then she kind of shifted, because it was actually hard to get people to hire you when you were a woman as a lawyer. So she and her husband, they got her ordained as a Unitarian minister in 1892, and she preached for 20 years at a place called the Temple, a church. And then her husband died. And then she struggled financially. She actually moved to a farm. She attempted to write and through agriculture make a living, but she spent her final years a widow in poverty and was deemed eccentric, probably still because she wanted to be a lawyer, right? I wish I could have known this Unitarian Universalist ancestor of ours who just really worked hard to change the world of lawyering. I am sure I could have learned a lot from her. So let's turn to somebody who's still alive. Retired Judge LaDoris Hazard Cordell. That's a picture of her book. If you've not read her book, it's awesome. It's called Her Honor, and she tells stories, and she has an amazing storytelling approach. She's this distinguished legal professional. She retired as a judge in 2001, but she's been an advocate for social justice since forever. She was the first African-American woman to sit on the Superior Court for Northern California and made significant contributions to the judiciary and the community. She graduated from Stanford Law School and she served as assistant dean at Stanford Law School. And then one day, they needed somebody in the municipal court, and somebody said, hey, I wonder if LaDoris is busy. So they invited her to come down and just do an appearance and like run a court thing, and she did really well. She tells the story in the book of the first case involving two black women that were fighting about something. She brought herself into the conversation in making a decision that helped both of them come to peace. And then she stayed doing that because she enjoyed it, and she was really respected by the people. And so in 1988, in 1982, she was appointed to the municipal court formally, and then in 1988, she was elevated to Superior Court. She served with distinction until she retired in 2001. California elects people to the courts, so she was a little bit revolutionary in not making people very happy, so getting reelected was always really hard. She's renowned for her work in the working on the rights of marginalized community, an outspoken critic of the criminal justice system's disparities. She would just talk about it and get in trouble. She's worked tirelessly to promote equity and fairness, and in her work at Stanford, where she moved on to be vice provost, she focused on diversity and student affairs. She also is a talented artist and pianist, which I just think is fun to know. She tells the stories of this in her book as well. She's also a proud member of the LGBTQ+ community. She lives with her partner and is a loving and supportive family, and her openness about her sexuality has been a role model for many since she was really open about it when she was open about all the things that were wrong with the justice system. She stayed within her role, being a judge, but she was right on the edge of making sure that she did everything she could for communities that needed her. I would love to have dinner with her and figure out how she could be in so many spaces and still stay a judge. She is amazing. Read her book. And then, last but not least, is somebody who's local here, who you may never have heard of, Judge Shannon E. Filbert. She graduated from the University at Buffalo School of Law, a place that honors me by letting me be a professor there. Judge Filbert, before she was Judge Filbert, back when she was just Shannon Filbert, not just, where she was the wonderful Shannon Filbert, spent years as a legal aid attorney for children. She won election to the West Seneca Town Justice in 2015, and then in 2018, she was promoted to serve as a confidential law clerk to then family court judge Lisa Block Rodwin, an amazing woman in and of herself. She was, at that point, the only law clerk with a physical disability in the entire Western New York court system at all. And she's a quadriplegic. At the age of 41, this past January, she had what she described as her defying gravity moment when she became Erie County's first and newest family court judge. She called the moment the culmination of 25 years of breaking down barriers and facing obstacles head first. She is the only quadriplegic serving a full-time judgeship in New York State. She describes her paralysis herself as that a little bit better than late actor Christopher Reeve. She can breathe on her own and shrug her shoulders. She's not hesitant to talk about being a quadriplegic. As far as she's concerned, it's a fact of life. She says, there are always days when I'll be down, but honestly, I've got a great attitude. It is what it is. Nothing I can do to change it. How does she do this? She makes extensive use of voice-activated technology, maintains a rigid organizational system, relies on an assistant to serve her with her legal needs, but also to do everything from using the bathroom and dressing to taking a drink of water. She has rewired her brain to do something that my brain doesn't do. She remembers everything important, because writing things down is not an option. She has an iron trap memory for family law. She tells the story of how this happened. There was a car accident on icy roads when she was in high school. She was in Atlanta for 5 months in rehab, and she had an aunt who came in and tutored her so she could catch up with her schoolwork and graduate on time. Her parents moved into a handicapped accessible house, and her mom informed her, you can either keep feeling sorry for yourself or do the work necessary to achieve her life's goal. Judge Filbert, living proof of what this year's Ware lecturer at the UUA General Assembly wrote, who wrote the book Loving Our Own Bones, Disability, Wisdom, and the Spiritual Subversiveness of Knowing Ourselves Whole. Dr. Belser writes, disability is an ordinary fact of life, an essential part of my being. Like most identities, it's a mixed bag, sometimes painful and frustrating, sometimes flush, with unexpected joy. If you want to know me, you have to know my disability. It's a core of who I am, how I experience the world. So again, I keep giving you book assignments, right? But I'm encouraging you to read Loving Our Own Bones. It's an amazing, amazing book, profound book, and it's beautifully written. So after her swearing in last January, Judge Filbert says, there's always, this is a quote from her, there's always going to be a stigma attached to a disability. It's unfortunate but true. I just think I'm proving that stigma may be incorrect, and that just because somebody has a disability doesn't mean they're not capable of doing the job just as good as an able-bodied person. So I think I can prove that to people, and hopefully will inspire some people who might think that they could not move up in the world or get somewhere. We can do it. Judge Filbert does not consider herself a hero or a superhero, but I sure do. Let's actually watch a brief clip of her talking after her induction, if Les can make that happen. Do I switch to the next slide? There we go. Okay, I'm about to go back to She-Hulk, but I'm going to interrupt myself. Sorry. Because, you know who's another amazing, awesome woman attorney? The United States Vice President Kamala Harris. I know we can't talk about her much, but you know what? She's had her own struggles to belong and to achieve justice. So I can't be talking about heroic women lawyers without giving her a shout out. So we're going to return to She-Hulk, okay? You're like, wait, She-Hulk was the thing. But aren't you glad we talked about those other people? Yeah, you are. You probably think, hey, that quote on power is why she thought of her. Some of the other things I told you about her. But it's in fact also something that happened at the end of the series. Again, I want you to go watch this. It's an amazing miniseries. I'm going to tell you about part of the last episode because it is so powerful. I'm not going to spoil it for those of you who are definitely going to watch it, even if you have to come over to my house after this sermon. So I've already told you, this is a weird, weird TV show for many of us because the character's sitting there acting out with all these people, and then all of a sudden turns, talks to us, the people who are viewing. So the last episode starts unfolding, and I've been watching this series with Simon, and I was like, whoa. This had felt so unlike most. I have a son who's now 19, and I've watched a lot of Marvel. So it wasn't a typical, I was like, this is a really cool show. It isn't typical Marvel. This is all really good. I'm having a lot of fun. I've sat through a lot of Marvel because I'm a good mother, but it wasn't my jam. And all of a sudden, this last episode is feeling a whole heck of a lot like a Marvel movie ending. I'm like, are you serious? What's going on? It was odd. And in the middle of the episode, Jen Walters looks right at us and says, this doesn't feel right to me, and asks us Does it feel right to you? And I'm like, thank goodness. No, I was really wondering what was going on. And then the most amazing things happened. The pretend actor, human lawyer Jen, turns herself into She-Hulk, walks off the set. She's kind of walking in the outside spaces. And she walks into the writer's room and demands the writers rewrite the episode. Let me say that again. She demands the writers rewrite the episode. They send her to the boss, who allows that rewrite. She-Hulk didn't like what was happening. She took steps to change it. She didn't feel like she belonged in that story, and she changed it. So what have we talked about today? We've talked about a pretend superhero who thinks about power, how it should be wielded, who rejects a story and causes it to be changed. We've talked about Ada Kepley, who fought a system that wouldn't allow her to go to law school and be a lawyer, but sadly was caught up in the reality of the early 1900s as a woman lawyer where she couldn't succeed. We talked about a California judge who accepted that she needed to work within the system, but went to the boundaries, went to the very edges and pushed on them, and is still making good trouble. We talked about the fact that this very January, the first paraplegic to serve as a New York State judge was sworn in right here in Erie County. A true hero who's kept going even when it's hard, and who decided that even though the system didn't look like it was going to let her fit in, she could push it, shape it to make it so that she could fit in. So we talked about belonging and justice being a two-way street. We have to create a sense of belonging for full community, to include others, but we also have to figure out how to fit ourselves in. So I'm going to give you an assignment, I'm a professor, to act on that and talk about that in the real world. But before I do this, I actually am going to do something that I also think is important to belonging. I'm going to stop for a minute and express some gratitude. To me, gratitude is essential to fostering belonging and actually achieving justice in certain cases. So I want to take a minute to express some thanks, because I'm a professor and I give a decent lecture. Sermons are different. So I'm grateful to those who helped me create this sermon experience for you today, starting with the ministry team at Summer Institute, who invited me to give my first version, to Reverend Michelle, who watched the version that I did at Summer Institute and gave me some feedback then. But also in the early summer, I had all these ideas in my head, and she helped me organize them, because I needed a lot of help to help my brain get to organize them. My amazing friend Jeff Wilson, who's the lead pastor at Holy Trinity Lutheran Church, he helped me think through how to do this as a sermon. My pod sisters from the Foz Collective Beloved Conversation Group, a UU group, we've been meeting together since 2022, which apparently is a big year in this sermon for me. We've been talking about unlearning racism, and they let me workshop it with them. Summer Institute and law school and other friends who gave me ideas on either the first version or just my ideas. My beautiful children, Tate and Simon, who've listened to me and let me worry and talk about this. And all of you who are here on a holiday weekend or watching it later, thank you for being here. You've created a space where I feel like I can belong. And I share thanks for all of you, and I love you all. So I'm going to give you your assignment and invite you to do two things this week. Consider the communities that you're in. I mean, this one here, but other communities you're in. How might you work collectively to create space for and a sense of more belonging and justice by reimagining and advocating for true inclusivity, like the people we heard about, the pretend and 3 real lawyers? And then plan actual ways to open your heart, to rethink your place in communities so that you can further weave yourself into a tapestry of justice and belonging and advocating for wonderful spaces for all. Some of you, nerds like me, might even want to take a moment to jot down 1 or 2 ideas before you leave church today. So, thank you all very much for listening to this sermon.